So, hello everyone. This is the Digital Act last and final session. And this afternoon is time to the focus number 3, Mediademic on Tour 2020. And we are pleased to welcome the curator, Gina Valenti, from Festival 404 from Argentina. And Garance, please, if you want to introduce Gina Valenti.
Gina Valenti est à la fois artiste.
Both an artist, a teacher, composer, and a curator. Born in Buenos Aires, she lives in Rosario in Argentina. She is a graduate of the art school and created the 404 Festival in 2004. There's an art and technology festival which is held in a different country every year. So in November 2020, the festival will be completely digital with regard to the pandemic of the 2020. And now we're going to launch the Gina Valentina's film.
Bonjour, VIDEOFORMES. Nice to meet you all. My name is Gina Valenti, and I come from Argentina, where I am full professor at the Faculty of Humanities and Arts at the National University of Rosario. I am a composer, writer, and since 2004, I run the 404 International Festival of Art and Technology. The 404 name comes from an error on the internet, and it was chosen for this project, assuming that in arts, an error becomes a new possibility. Every error disturbs us because it shatters the certainty of our centuries of knowledge, but every time we are wrong, a part of us usually proves us right. We live in a system that allows mistakes only when the solutions can be found within it. We live in a system and we function in it, except when we make art. As I like to say, error is creation. 404 is an independent, non-profit project whose main goal is to democratize culture, spreading ideas and artworks that unite art with technology. 404 has been the first Argentinian festival of its kind, and its particularity lies in being an itinerant initiative, having been presented in 44 cultural centers, universities, and public places in 11 countries so far: Argentina, Italy, Switzerland, Spain, Belgium, Austria, Taiwan, Russia, Colombia, Japan, and the United States. It is important to highlight that many of these editions have been organized by artists with a special sensibility and a great commitment. Thousands of artists, professors, and researchers from 50 countries have been part of this project that has enjoyed the presence of 1 million visitors so far, amongst which stand out public school students who are not usually part of this kind of activities, consolidating the educational and social mission of this project. It is also remarkable the fact that the 404 team is formed by artists, professors, and students that work as volunteers, facing every year's challenge with professionalism, generosity, and joy. Holding the conviction that art is far beyond entertainment and technology, 404 has been transformed into a collaborative artwork, becoming an educational space that encourages people to rethink and express themselves beyond their condition. I am happy to announce that the 18th year of the 404 Festival starts with the presentation of Mediademic on Tour at VIDEOFORMES, being France the 12th country that this project visits. This time you will be able to watch a selection of videos that were made by artists who took part in the last year's edition of 404 Festival under the title Mediademic. Last year's edition was the first time that 404 has run online. Through an open call, we were able to meet new artists. 48 artists from 22 countries were selected in different areas. It was amazing to see the strength of their productions and to learn how they were working on them even during quarantine. Then we had to think of a new format to present them, and a new way to catch people's attention. No virtual simulation can replace the adrenaline of presential encounters, especially when we talk about interactive exhibitions, festivals where artists want to go to meet other artists, and people need to be there to experience the artworks. But we thought that since time is broken and space too, we could actually turn this into a positive aspect. So we finally streamed the artworks with artists' messages and making of the artworks during 3 days with free access, without schedule and without interruptions, creating a vortex that worked like a living organism, where every time people entered, they could find content as a way of companionship. Besides the creation of the aesthetics, concept, manifesto, and the organization tasks, we were also involved in the production of artworks that were specially made for Mediademic. The 40-minute selection that you are going to find in VIDEOFORMES has been part of this transmission and consists of videos that, with their varied themes and styles, manifest the atmosphere of this age where being human ends up being a challenge. At the beginning of 2020, due to the pandemic that led to the confinement of citizens around the world, the nerve centers of the main metropolises were, for the first time, deserted. Yet, alone and without passers-by, the main billboards continued to function, perhaps a postcard of the technological landscapes of our time. Thinking of technology doesn't usually lead us into art. For most people, technology is synonymous with communication and progress. It's synonymous with access. But every time we talk about access, we are talking at the same time about exclusion. Even if we know that the new media are being used as mechanisms of control, thinking of today's technology in a critical way is unthinkable for most of the people, because the impact of media in our constitution has become invisible. To understand our relationship with technology, we must not underestimate its warlike origins and the corporate nature of the media that transforms us from humans into users. The affective bond between people and media has replaced the affective bond between people. In a society that produces consumers, distinguishing art from spectacle becomes more difficult every time, since we are more familiar with one term than the other. Cultural industries are, as they are being called, industries, and they are those who form our perception of the world. Before we can notice it, this process has already started inside of us. The cultural imaginaries create empathic bonds with those who consume them, and therefore they print their points of view regarding today's topics. That's what I call ideology of perception. The more mediated a society is, the more permeable it will be. The more functional a society is, the more difficult it will be to achieve its emancipation. The illusion that media projects in ourselves is almost unquestionable, especially because most of the people have no time or conceptual resources to analyze such phenomenon from self-perspectives. If we live our lives as an audience, we can't delete the system of spectacle, because by doing so, we would be deleting ourselves. Why do we do art in our times? How can we be sure that this is what we are doing? We used to say that the only thing that a machine can't do is art, but now we are not so sure anymore. As regards the human condition of our times, for artificial intelligence, humans might end up being mythological creatures. In this scenario, I like to think of art as a Trojan horse, as an expressive reaction in an oppressive system, a medium to wake up, to resist, and subvert the impact of hegemonic power. Reality exceeds us, but to transform it, we must exceed it too. And that is what art can do for us. That's why in art I trust, in people I believe. You're welcome to contact us if you want to be part of our project, either by sending your proposal or to become part of the team. I would like to thank Gabriel and to all the team of VIDEOFORMES for inviting me to take part in this great event. Congratulations for making this possible despite the special context that has locked us up on the other side of the monitors. I hope to see you soon. Goodbye and take care.
Okay, so now we're gonna try to join Gina Valenti in Argentina. With a special jingle.
Hello.
Hello, Gina.
Bonjour.
Ah, bonjour. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you?
The sound is perfect, but do you have switch on your cam?
Let me check.
Okay.
Are you watching me?
Not for a moment.
Okay. Let me check now.
It's okay?
Are you watching me now?
Oh,
Karen.
yes.
Yeah. Probably some delay.
Hello, with a beautiful lipstick.
Oh, thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Okay, so thank you, Gina Valenti, and thank you for Festival 404 for this little focus on the creation at the time of COVID and how a cultural structure adapts in COVID's time. And I really like you talk about a vortex, sort of vortex in the flow. That's a good description of Festival 404.
Well, it is a good description of last year's edition, probably, because with Mediademic, it was the first time, as you are doing now, that we run the festival completely online. And one of the main issues was what to do with so many artworks in an era where people used to use internet for entertainment, for having fun, for communication, and it was a challenge to think a new format that defies this situation. So that's why, after talking to Scott, that we will meet soon, now today in VIDEOFORMES, I start thinking that probably it was good to create this vortex, like this flow, without schedule, so that people could see it as a way of companionship. It was all the time going and going with different artworks, and every time you go, you could go and see the artworks every time, and it's like, TV still exists, and many people just turn it on to feel some voice, to feel that something is happening there. So that creates a new space inside the environment that you are living. So that's why I thought about this flow. Also, because I understand that people now, well, last year it was worse, that people maybe doesn't want to pretend that things are not happening. And it was hard for me to ask last year to the artists and the audience, to ask them to do something at one time. For example, let's meet at 3 p.m. because time was broken and space too. And I thought that we should think about something different. So that's why I call it a vortex, because it's the way of maybe cracking the wall and to see what's beyond these several walls we are having in front of us. And I think that one of the missions in arts, it's to go across all these walls, cultural, political walls, to see what happens. So that was the idea.
Okay. Well, we have the impression that digital art is a small village, but during your presentation, I understand that it's a small village, but in expansion. It's expanded village, yes? And
Yes.
because you talk about new artists and new format, and why suddenly this artist appear on the stage? You say you have no programations. It's because it's the idea of the flow.
Yes. You mean how did I meet the art? How did I meet the artists?
Yes, and why the number is increased suddenly?
Well, because every time we do something different, there are pros and against. And last year, since we couldn't make it in a physical way, the festival, we could present more artworks because we didn't were dependent on the budget, on the technical requirements. So we in that point it was better because we could present more works. And that's, I think I reply your question. I'm not sure if that was the question, but it was the main difference. For me, also from the open call, we met new artists. And so in that way, we were more free last year than before, I think.
Okay. Perhaps you can explain the principle of this festival. Why the choice of a homelessness festival? You mean 1 year, one country?
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, our headquarters are in Rosario, Argentina. We live here, the main team, we live here and we produce here and we teach here. But the 404, even if it started in Rosario, I'm going to tell you why we started touring with the festival. Because when we started here, it was so new that we had to create an audience. And it was so expensive and it was so difficult to understand that after the first festival, that was really a success. I mean, nobody could believe how many artists came to Rosario and how many people were entering into the museums. They were asking, what are we going to do with these computers here? So after that, we knew that it was going to be very difficult to guarantee the continuity of the project here every year. And the artist, at first I said, I don't know if we can still going on with this project because it was so ambitious and so big and so new. So the artist started sending letters and emails saying, no, Gina, you have to keep going. You cannot stop doing this festival. So I said, okay, how are we going to do this? And they say, we could do this in another country. So that's the main problem became a new characteristic of the project. And so that's why, yeah.
Okay, why this strong interest in art and technology?
Well, I think art and technology is a long-time relation. Even if we are now talking about digital, new media, new technology, there was always been like a romance, let's say, a romance between art and technology, and a romance, and also because sometimes technology is the surprise, and art, if art follows the technology, the trending technologies, it might take the risk to lose the main characteristics or not. So that's why when I say art and technology, I focus on the amperes, on the I, that unites both terms, but at the same time separates those areas. And also because in 2004, when we started in Rosario, before the festival was born, I had a project with Mariano Guzman, my partner in that time, who was called Astas Romas, and we started making an open call to see what was going on outside Rosario, outside Argentina. I was very much into the website development at that time, and when we started receiving those works, I started to see that most of the most interesting artworks that we were receiving were working with new technology. So then we said, maybe we should create some situation where we can meet these persons and these people can meet each other. So that's why we started 404. And that's why 404 it's about art and technology. At first, the first name of the festival, it was Electronic Art Festival. But then I decided to change it because I didn't want that the word art has a description, like an adjective. No, electronic art. I think art is art, and whatever art can do with different means, such as technology, such as science, such as nature. But I like to keep art as a separate entity.
Okay, thank you, Gina.
You're
Well,
welcome.
the time is short, so
I
I
know.
keep some questions for the panel discussion with Scott and Regina after. Okay,
Okay.
but now I think we have 5 minutes break for technique.
Okay.
Okay,
Well,
and
thank
see you
very much.
soon.
I see you soon.
Okay, thank you,
Bye-bye.
Gina. Okay, so we continue with the artist presentation. So Garance, you present Scott Hessels.
Merci Elise. Scott Hessels est un artiste.
Hessels is a mediatic sculpture artist and a director born in Michigan and currently residing in Hong Kong. So he wants to explore the new relations between image and movement and his environment. So we see this desire of exploring things in his last creation, beloved actually, in Clermont-Ferrand, in Place de Victoire. So now we're going to see the video presentation of Scott Hessels.
I'm Scott Hessels. Thanks for inviting me. I'm very sorry that I can't be with you, but I send my best wishes from Hong Kong. I'm a sculptor who works with technology and the moving image. It's cinema, but I'm more interested in the deeper energies that actually create movies, the power behind what we watch. Think of it as cinema of the elements. I designed a series of sculptures that make a moving image by tapping into natural forces. As water falls over the 4-meter-high sculpture, a transmission assembly causes 2 wheels to spin in opposite directions, and the movie plays using the river's energy. A shadow puppet show, in which the wind powers the light, 2 rotating diorama backgrounds, and the puppets themselves. By denying the usual sources of electricity and digital content, I generate the life that flickers on the screen with other energies. They question the literal power in our media, and therefore the social, political, and corporate powers as well. They're based on the early optical toys that led to the evolution of cinema. Movies started here, but because they use natural force, these machines are self-willed displays. If there's no wind, there's no movie. Using pedal power, the bicycle turns a lenticular. These sculptures are also fake media history, like an old man saying, "I remember when movies were powered by bicycles." In this one, wind spins a rotating mirrored diamond that reflects the frames of animation. By revealing the power behind the moving image, they question the reasons why technology and its energy waste are hidden from us. That series used direct natural energy, but I also used sensors to measure forces in a site. This light installation was made by driving the famous Los Angeles Mountain Road with 5 types of sensors, measuring altitude, speed, direction, tilt, and engine noise. I used the data to create a model of the actual road, down to every pothole. That virtual path controlled 2 robotic lights in a room filled with fog, exactly recreating the journey of driving the road. I call these Mediated Earthworks, referencing the land art movement that created sculptures that integrated with their site. This sculpture is controlled by sensors measuring morning fog moving away from the water. Or sensors on tidal movement. Unlike the original earthworks, however, sensors let me connect with natural sites without damage to the ecosystem. This idea of using computational sensing to give nature a shared influence in the forming of an artwork led to an education program called Extreme Environments. The rule? The artwork cannot exist without direct input from nature. We travel to the most inaccessible sites on the planet and partner with scientific researchers working in remote field stations. In the Mojave Desert, students live with scientists near Death Valley. In Antarctica, aboard a Russian polar research vessel. In each expedition, students use the same sensors as the researchers to collect data about an endangered ecosystem and transform it into new media artworks that promote a better understanding of issues affecting the site. We worked underground for weeks in jungle caves in Vietnam, just discovered a year earlier. We were the first students and artists to see these amazing underground formations. We partnered with the climate scientists at a remote field research station in the Solomon Islands, addressing rising ocean levels and assisting in 4 hatchings of the rare hawksbill turtles. And recently, we worked with government datasets after one of the worst typhoons in history ripped through Asia, making Hong Kong itself an extreme environment. The program is a world-renowned education experiment in arts-based field research, and each expedition has been followed by millions, raising awareness on climate change issues. Sensors create data streams, so other streams beyond the natural world can also be a driver for making cinema. Since 2004, I've been creating projects that challenge traditional representations of the hardware flying above us, under the name celestial mechanics. These are actual communication satellites coming into contact with the geostationary ring. It's from the first version I created at UCLA for dome-shaped planetariums. That's why these animations are round. Instead of stars, my night sky program interpreted the paths, behaviors, and patterns of over 30,000 aerial technologies. Dozens of government, science, and private agencies provided the raw mathematical data, the actual longitude, latitude, and altitude of nearly 50 airborne technologies, mostly in text form. We plotted the data streams into 3D space and then stylized them. This section shows low Earth orbiting satellites, mostly surveillance, and I can name every satellite here, and their footprint, how much of the Earth they're looking at. So this is how much you're being watched from above. The most iconic section of my artwork was made by my student Aaron Koblin, now an established data artist. Celestial mechanics clearly shows the transition from data visualization to information arts that was just beginning 20 years ago. My project in Clermont-Ferrand also begins with a data stream. We scan the Place de la Victoire with ground-penetrating radar, a new technology that sends a signal down into the stone and reveals the structures underneath. This is a 3D model of the ruins below the courtyard that date back to antiquity. It's the poetry of these scans that inspires the work, not the science. The anamorphic graphics created are about what is below every victory, what has to be lost for those to win. Recently, I've been exploring making cinema with chemicals that react to changes in the environment, paints that change color based on temperature or pollution, metals that change and remember their shape, magnetic liquids, crystals, materials that are known as smart materials. 2 shields were hand-pounded from copper, and I put a new type of heating polymer on the back that let me control the temperature exactly between 25 and 35 degrees. I chemically engineered pigments that would change color at those thresholds, shifting from dark blacks and browns to bright colored pinks and greens. This is gradient animation. I'm using material behaviors to represent how military weapons evolve from deadly, grisly tools of brute force to toys, comics, and popular culture, how weapons become candy. This could be a low-energy information system. This temperature shift is the same as sunlight on a building. Smart materials use no energy, create no pollutants, are longer lasting, and are safer for public interaction than electronic signage. My next project is with smart glass. I'm going to close with a story about a sculpture I made near you in Auvergne a few years ago. I designed 5 large format lenticular prints mounted onto rotating cylinders that turned by water wheels dipped into the mountain river's flow. Simple lighting systems also used the river's current. The 5 water wheels were fabricated in a welding shop in Hong Kong, shipped to France, and installed in the river. That's nice documentation, but it's not really the truth. 2 days prior to the exhibition opening, a violent mountain storm passed through the region, raising water levels and destroying the machines. We took the twisted metal out of the river and rebuilt them. Back in the river, the region was then pelted with hail 5 centimeters wide, smashing the sculptures once again. A stretch of extreme heat then hit the valley and melted the sheets when a tree branch got caught in the wheels. In early August, the sculptures were hit by multiple lightning strikes and literally caught on fire. I talk a lot about working with nature, but that mean little river spit my artwork back at me over and over. A sculptor has a will to form, the need to decide the shape of something. In everything I've shown you today, I let outside forces have a voice in the structure of the final artwork. I share my will to form with nature. But that's 2 wills, and that river had a very different idea for the shape of my artwork. This battle of wills is everywhere, and is a way of considering our water and air pollution problems and other climate issues. Form must be a collaboration. We must work with nature's will if we're going to share this planet. By revealing the elements that create the moving image, my artworks become a way to see those wills and reveal the true powers that are hidden behind our media. Thank you for letting me present my work. If you'd like to see more, please visit my website.
Née à Villars, en Autriche, Regina Hübner.
Regina Hübner was a graphic student and then studied in the art school in Rome. She's a multidisciplinary artist, of which the approach is very personal, demanding, and meticulous. So she raises certain questions around people and their relationships, but also science and love. Her last creation, Dear Cell, a video installation, illustrates this approach.
Bonjour. Here you see excerpts from 15 videos from the last 20 years in which the concepts of communication, time, relationship, and perception are common to the work I exposed to VIDEOFORMES Festival 2021. My images are ideas of the reality, often with autobiographical background. Beside video, I use different methods like experimental photography, sound, text, performative acts, environment, subjects and objects, sentiment, and of course concept. The moving image is a visual form of time and space. I also collaborate with personalities from art, music, literature, and science, and in some projects with special key figures, the so-called protagonists. Here you see 21 persons pronounce the most important message they wanted to leave. It is without sound and shows what happens when the author separates from the message. It includes a non-understandable sound work and several symposia. Here you see milk dropping down, and at a certain point the process inverts and time flows back. The artwork is a self-standing being with its own life. On certain occasions, I put this independent artwork, like a video for example, in relation to a certain space and a certain moment. This is the first work I made when I came in touch with two immunologists, and they explained immunology with the research on the self and the not self in life. This is an ongoing project about time and connections, in which I asked people to write a letter to their parents and to be conscious that without a father and a mother, we would not be on earth. This is a journey going on and maybe also going back. As I said before, autobiographical situations are an impulse. This video was made at a coiffeur, hairdresser in Austria, to which my mother was related during the Second World War. Here you see salt, waiting salt. I used a balance belonged to my grandmother, and also in this case the process on a certain point inverts. The artwork is a self-standing being with his own life. On certain occasions I put this independent artwork in relation to a certain space and a certain moment. It forms then a new, unrepeatable artwork, which I call ambientation. Loving, for example, was projected on the giant dome at the Nuit Blanche in Paris, and with an environment and the act of the observers at VIDEOFORMES 2019. Also here you see milk flowing. This is a work I have conceived in 2019, inspired by a very early work by an Austrian video artist. The editing I did during the first lockdown due to the COVID pandemic in Italy. DSL is part of my interdisciplinary research project, Perception of Self and Non-Self in Life, inspired on the basic principle of immunology, the differentiation between the self and the not-self. 17 researchers of immunology and neurobiology participated, and they are, together with their objects of research, the protagonists. DSL enlightens the perception of the relationship and puts evidence on the unmistakable characters of each throughout thought and body. The scientists wrote a letter by hand, which you saw before, and the object of research, and they have addressed such a letter themselves, personifying the object in a new artistic system. The live recording, which you saw before, of the handwriting shows the calligraphy which determines the individual. Here you see the transcription, which is readable, and it is like a document. The cells show photographs, videos, and generated data of proteins, neurons, cells, and the whole living systems, produced by the laboratories of the involved scientists. The image is the proof of what happens. Its aesthetic is independent of its value. Those images we all carry in our bodies. Those are the eyes of the scientists. They use high-edge technology and especially produced microscopes. But it is with the eye, nature's gift, that they capture, that they see. The eye is our most beautiful organ. My intuition was to invert to habitual relationship between researcher and object, including the final observer, the connection between the ambientation at the arrotoir stands in silence and devotion.
Okay, so thank you, Regina. So we are back on stage. Regina, I invite you to join me on the stage, if you are here. Okay. And then this afternoon we have a new technical step because we have two Skype. So can we join Gina and Scott from Hong Kong? So Regina, you have time to come. Okay, can you talk, Gina? Are you here? C'est Scott. Okay, Scott, do you hear me? Oh,
You hear me? All right.
hello.
Hello.
Sorry, I know that it's late for you in Hong Kong,
It's okay.
but you're perfect. You're very fresh. Okay, thank you, Scott. And Gina? Okay. Okay, Gina is here. Okay, you hear me, Gina?
Yes, I
Okay,
hear you.
it's perfect. Thank you. Okay, so our world is a world of connection, and so is digital art. So I know that many of you know each other and appreciate each other's work. I know that it is the case here with Gina, Scott, and Regina. So I'm very pleased to talk with you. Thank you. So today we make a big gap between Argentina and Hong Kong. And for once, France and Clermont-Ferrand is the center of the world as the Perpignan railway station for Dali. So we continue with the last chat entitled Unconventional Science. And the underlying idea here is to decipher how we talk about science and how does science and researchers speak to us in a way that goes out of a traditional and academic way on form of research. So Gina, you're a curator, so you're also an art critic. So you can react, perhaps, if you want, also to the words of the two artists. Don't hesitate to react about that. And my first question is for the two artists. What led you to invest in science and technology? I don't know, for example, Regina, I know that B cells, T cells, and other macrophages have no longer a secret for you. So why your interest in science, especially?
Yes. I'm interested in life, and science is an activity which tries to understand life and nature. This is why I love science.
Is it your first collaboration with laboratory and scientists and researchers?
I sometimes collaborate with other artists, musicians or visual artists, also with personalities maybe from philosophy or history, art history, but I never worked with real pure scientists from hard science. It is the first time, yes.
Okay. I know that the idea is perhaps to, how we could say that, paying tribute to scientists because they, comment dire, comment est-ce qu'on dit, ils donnent leur vie, they give their life for the object of research. Mm-hmm. So is it a tribute to this form of work of life mm-hmm. for scientists?
Yes, of course. So maybe I say something about Dear Cell now, the work I exposed here at VIDEOFORMES. And on this point, I'm very happy to be able here by real in Clermont-Ferrand, and I would like to thank to VIDEOFORMES to have me invited. And thank you very much to Gabriel Soucher, its director. So I'm really very glad that I was able to realize to show this work by real. In Dear Cell, you see the contributions of 17 immunologists. So they are researchers, and I was invited to their laboratories, and I understood that they do a very long work, a work which longs maybe a whole professional life, and which starts with often with an intuition, but then it has go ahead among a lot of difficulties. Maybe after 30 years, if everything went well, we will get a new therapy for a disease. So what connects me to those scientists is, of course, the passion they feel with the object and the very special and profound relationship. Personally, also because a researcher or a scientist must searches for something. No? He has an objective to reach, but he needs also the capability to leave this path, to see something else, to discover the unexpected. And in this I feel personally very close, because I am not a searcher, I'm a finder. Things come to me. And in science, this is also the creative impulse, of course, because you are open to try a new way.
And for example, Scott, are you an artist researcher or researcher artist? Because I talk about a tribute to science and scientists about the Regina works, but for you I have more the approach of innovation. So I have the idea that innovation and art is very important for you.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I would agree with much of what Regina said too, though, in the sense that I was drawn to science because it is a foundational study of the world around us. But I think for me, what the draw was, and I think Gina will back me up with this, Gina is a brilliant piano player, that, you know, if you go below the surface of music, it's mathematics. It's all math. So science kind of offers a different foundation that lets you build an artwork on a base that wouldn't be expected from normal fine arts. So the work evolves and grows because you're part of a critical practice. And I think I've worked with a lot of scientists over the last 20 years, and every one of them has been wonderful. I've never had a bad experience. And there is something about how art is sort of an interruption of their work, where they've been looking at their topic for a very long time from one point of view. And remember, a scientist always works very hard to separate themselves from their experiment, whereas an artist always works very hard to put themselves into their experiment. So it's a different type of engagement. So art is sort of a disruption of their practice, but a good one in the sense that you're joining their research, but you're taking it more as a creative approach to their research, which is a very different point of view for them. So I don't know if I'm an artist or a researcher. I'm just someone who enjoys sort of a critical investigation and looking at projects from many, many different points of view. And science presents a really interesting foundation for me to start with. Gina?
Okay, Gina, if you want to react. How do you engage with creation?
Well, I know we are talking about science today. I am not a scientist. I've been working with some scientists, but not that much. What I think about this is that the notion of what science is changed with the times, and actually. Science is an expanded field, and that consolidates fiction too. If we think what people think about science, it's now I don't know if we can separate both terms, science and fiction, because science has reached has crossed the limits, and now it's as I said, an expanded field. And what fiction proposes, sooner or later, science tries to make it happen. And I think that's an interesting relation between art, fiction, and science and technology. If we think nowadays, for example, most of the people, when you talk about artificial intelligence, for example, now we don't know if we are talking to a person or not, we have to say we are a human person, because the more synthesized we are, the easier is to emulate what a human is. And I think you have a PhD on AI and arts. Yes.
Okay.
If you have
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, yes, exactly. Yes, I know. So I know that it is your field. Today, 404, this year, 404, we will research on AI. Maybe what's the disappearance of human being, and how society think about about science, what science is today. Actually, now with the pandemic, started in 2020. Now we have a different approachment, social approachment to science. So, and science, it depends on who is behind the discovery and the research. Mostly, we are talking about big corporations, industries, and power, hegemonic power. So it's difficult to unite science with art, knowing all this background, that it's a mechanism that goes and goes. Regarding science, I mean, of course, what you are both doing is linked to science in the best way, in the best probably way, possible way. But this is why I'm into arts, because in arts we don't need verification of the results. What matters the most is the process. And I think that's the great of art, because the process is what transforms what transforms us. So I always remember Marshall McLuhan's axioma, the medium is the message, right? And axioma doesn't need a scientist validation, because it depends on the perception. It is already true once you say it. And I think that's more into arts, and that's the way I like to think about arts, more than into science. But of course, science, when you mix it with art, you are getting surprised, definitely. That's what I think.
Okay, so I don't know if we have audience, we have questions from the audience on the website or not in the chat. Garance, Tessa? No comment, no for a moment. Okay.
Can I say, I want to say hello to Regina and Scott.
Yeah, of course.
I'm happy to meet you. Yeah, and I want to say I met Scott in 2010 at the 404 in Taiwan. Yeah. And this is the first time we meet again. Since that time, we talk, but we are not into these video calls with Scott. So I thank you for giving us the chance to connect again. This is very important for us.
Yes, I will always associate Taipei with you, Gina. We had so much fun. But
what a time.
Thank you, VideoForms, for bringing us all three of us together. This is really lovely.
Yes.
Okay, so I have another question. Say, what are the difficulties in making scientific data visible? I mean, for you, Regina and Scott, have you got difficulties to embodiment the data scientists?
No at all. There were no difficulties to transform, I don't know, the idea in a visual form. For me, things happen automatically and in an intuitive way. Of course, with the visual form, giving to a relationship which happens in hard science. So, for example, in DSL, giving a visual form to it, it becomes more understandable to people who has nothing to do with immunology, for example, or with hard science, because it has a different language, of course, a more immediate language.
And the idea of the space in the chapel of Floratoire in Clermont-Ferrand, how do you work with the space? Why you decided to have 4 videos and to have 3 parts, 3 screens, the eye at the end of the chapel? This conceptualization is easy or not? Or it's a process?
No, I have to say also in this case, it was a natural birth, let me say like this, because Gabriel Secher proposed this space for me, and I immediately felt it absolutely well-fitting for DSL, because so the space is an oratoire, it's from the 17th century. It was used once to pray, but I would better say to be in a status where you leave behind yourself. You don't consider your ego, but you dedicate yourself to something else. And this is a similitude in research, in those researchers I have known, in those immunologists from the CIML Institute for Immunology in Marseille-Lumini, because those are people, they dedicate the whole life and their whole passion to what they are doing. The silence and the emptiness of Chapelle de l'Oratoire also fits in a natural way with the essentiality of DSL. DSL is composed by 4 videos. 2 videos are regarding the letters the scientists wrote to their object of research, and then they wrote back to themselves by personifying the object, such a letter. So we have a handwriting piece screened on a flat screen vertically, which reflects more a sheet of paper where you really write a letter down. And then we have the transcription of those letters. We have the cells, but this is a big simplification because those are neurons, proteins, whole living systems or living cells provided by the scientists, produced in their laboratories of CIML and then also from another institute for neurobiology, which is called INMED, always from Marseille. And you have filmed the eye of each researcher, of each of those 17 researchers. Of course, it is logical for me it is natural that the eye, the author of the result in research, also of those letters you will see, stay in the most holy place of a chapel, which is the apsis. Now, so I have put the eye and the apsis in the middle, the object of research, so there is a free hanging screen. You can see the image from both sides with the cells, and they are the only part in color video, images or video, short videos. And then at the other side there are the letters. Those 3 parts, except of the handwriting, which is on a screen in a different place, has the same size because they have the same importance. They are on the same level. Like also the space, Chapelle de l'Oratoire, in such a space, there is nobody above, more important or less important.
Okay. And for example, for you, Scott, is it as natural as Regina? I have the impression that art and science is your own DNA, so for you it's very simple.
I would say my approach is different in the sense that I generally see systems. So when I do look at science, it's often not the data as much as the force and the energy that's being captured through that data. So for me, it's a motor, it's an energy for making kinesis. And the kinesis is usually kinetic sculpture or a moving image or an animation. So I think it's more the energy than the visual of nature and science that appeals to me. It gives me a way to tap into natural energies without having to do any damage to the environment myself. And the scientists know how to capture the energy in the earth around us professionally. And that gives me an incredible foundation to do art that is moving based on that energy. So from there, the visualizations can go in any direction.
Okay. I don't know if, Gina, you want to react about that?
Yes. I remember in a few years ago, I was working, Scott reminded me because he said I am a musician, I am a piano composer, and I started working with a couple of Taiwanese artists. One of them is Wei Peng Kuo, and he presented an artwork about the mental landscapes. And I had an idea to wear this brainwave device during my piano performance live. And I had it, I was invited at that time by TEDx, and I knew that we were going to be in a very big theater. So I decided, it was originally an installation, this artwork I'm going to talk about. But when I saw this situation coming, I said, why don't we use it? And I placed this device, and the artwork consists about this sensor takes your brain values, and according to what you are thinking, to each one the values are different. The artist programs different images and colors, absolutely abstract images, and depends on the attention or meditation, the landscape is different. So I wanted to try this while I was playing the piano, because most of my life people ask me, what am I thinking while I'm playing? If it's more technical, if I'm concerned about the technical, or if I'm thinking about the melodies and flying with my mind. So I wanted to try it, and that's how the artwork became something else, something more, something different. And then after that, well, we found out that I was 50-50 after all, 50-50. And then I had the idea to bring this artwork with the Taiwanese artist who came to Rosario, with Jason Lee, the programmer, to bring this artwork to the schools, to the schools that never comes to the center, which is also the educational mission of 404, and to place this device on children and to see how they react. And I remember it was very touch experience. We were very excited and surprised, because when children applaud them, all the screen was full of colors, and the artwork was not programmed to be like that. So that's my latest experience with music and brainwave device. And I remember this because you're talking about the data value, and well, this could be visible in this work, and it's a challenge. It's a challenge. We never know what it looks, what our thoughts look like, yeah, and maybe it's good, but it's a good question.
Okay, and I don't know if you agree with me, both of you three, but perhaps you can say that talking science is it's also talking politics. Do you think it's correct? For example, Scott, you talk about ecology. I don't know for Regina if the idea for politics, actions, and science is in interaction or not. Perhaps, I don't know, Scott, if you want to react.
Well, I have to be careful what I say, because
you're under surveillance.
Yeah, always. So, and before Hong Kong, I was in Singapore, and Singapore was the same way. All media content is controlled by the government. So it is a difficult question because, yeah, you cannot separate science, just as Gina was saying, you can't separate science from the corporations, but you also can't separate it from the governments that are supporting it. You know, I started at UCLA, and almost all of UCLA is funded by the US military. So you're making art from money that is coming in through something you completely disagree with. However, saying that, Asia has a very different approach to art than the West does. In the West, art is an indulgence. It is something that rich people buy and hang on their walls. Where in Asia, it is considered a tool for innovation, that it stimulates creative thinking. So they encourage art to work with the sciences here much more. Almost every grant is for artists to pair up with scientists. The recent speech from our chief executive here was, we need more artists to be working with scientists and technologies. So it's heavily supported in a situation where you may not trust who is supporting it, but, you know, back in the day, would you have trusted the Medici family if they were funding your painting? You know, I mean, you have to sort of look at your opportunity to make art any way you can. So does that sound like a sellout?
I agree. Also, even every time we open the fridge, we are talking politics.
Yes.
Everywhere.
Yeah, that's a question of soft power too.
Yes.
And for example, for Regina, when I talk about the science and politics, in your work you reveal sort of fascination, I don't know if it's a good word, a fascination for science, but perhaps also you reveal this sort of increased distrust in scientist speech. I don't know if the researchers say something about that, trust and science, the public trust and science.
Yes, no, not really. The letters they wrote are very personal and don't, in some cases, yes, they touch also the relationship between scientist or researcher and environment. I mean now political environment or perception of normal people. Science and as well art is extremely expensive. And it is a privilege to be able to realize scientific research and art. And you need a financement. Financement is political, of course, because without organization and without people who pay taxes and politics who distribute those taxes, it is not possible. In this pandemic moment, I think politics must collaborate with scientists, because otherwise we will never come out. In some cases it works quite well, in other cases it does not work so well. But it is for sure a moment where we have to realize that there can be true things and there can be perceptions. But the true things are those who can be proven and repeatable. We are, of course, in a situation where we, with the COVID, for example, or with the vaccines, we know only a few, we have only a few time to experiment if the way we are going will lead us to come out of the situation. So it is a moment where we have to trust each other. The politics must trust the scientists and vice versa, and we should also trust to them. The people, those researchers I was in contact with, they are exactly immunologists, and we worked in 2019. I have to say that since, of course, they are biologists, and they know very well that we are a whole thing, and they know very well that a virus can cause a disaster, a worldwide disaster. For them, nothing is new. They are very conscious about the possibilities in life, about, of course, also the difficult that people could trust. I don't know if they must trust, but what we can observe, of course, is even if we have now a global and education, children, we know the difference between a bacteria and a virus. We learn it in elementary school. But nevertheless, a lot of people want to go back and want to believe in the pendulum. No? If it goes like this, it means I will be healthy. If it goes like this, it means I should not go the path. And I don't know. Maybe we need some mystere, no? I don't agree with this, of course, but it is human, probably.
But do you contact us after the pandemic?
Sorry?
Do you contact these researchers now after the pandemic tour? And
yes.
Because perhaps the speech can change with bacteria, virus, etc.
Yes, of course.
Public opinion.
I had also a lot of questions. I was very afraid. You know, I live in Italy, in Rome. Italy was the first country which was faced from one day to the other without mask, without jail, nothing, and we saw only dead people, dead people, dead people. It was terrible. And in this case, of course, I phoned them and I said, is there a hope? What happens? And they were very quiet. Stay at home, close your windows, don't go out, and wait. So this was the question, and this is what we have to do. We have to, in a certain way, accept that it's the nature which gives the rules, even if I want or if I don't want. It's not Mr. Politik who wants to lock me down. Yeah.
As for Scott and your disaster invitation here with a very bad river here in Clermont-Ferrand in Auvergne, the nature has the control.
Yes, that was quite an experience. You know, that whole story, it's amazing how many people in the area came together to help me keep it running. You know, farmers would stop by and help out. Local architecture school stepped up. There was a local theater group in Clermont-Ferrand that would give me their truck and their staff. So at the end of it, I had made a great group of friends in that area, and I had a good story to tell. So I don't have a single regret from that whole experience at all. It was the people there were wonderful to work with, and that was incredibly rewarding for me.
And Gina, this question of art, science, technology, and trust, is it a question or not? For example, have you been ever confronted to controversies in your festival about, special technology or, I don't know, artificial intelligence, etc., or not?
No, not really. No, not so far. No, what I was thinking after I hear you talking, that there's also a strong relationship between science and religion. And nowadays, we are living in a multi-layered society where you can find people that think in the future, about the future, and people who still lives in the medieval times. No, so that's the problem regarding what science and the pandemic. Because I want to say something. In my country, media, or hegemonic media, are trying to convince people who that don't take the Russian vaccine, for example. This science, it's impossible to separate it from from what we are all living, because we are living in a mediated society. Media are controlled by the economic power. Politics are in the middle of this relation, and so it's a toxical landscape, let's say. But I wanted to mention this. I don't know if this is happening in your countries, that to bring to politics the vaccine, the different vaccine, the Cambridge yes, the Russian no, the Indian I don't know. Is this happening to you? I want to know.
That's a problem too here.
The European community agreed to invest in certain vaccines, Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson, and did not invest in Sputnik or in the Chinese vaccine. But this is because we are in Europe now, so we are under the influence of America and Great Britain, and they are produced there, and our German BioNTech, and so it is also logic that you first come in touch which is closer to you. But I think or at least in Italy, but in whole Europe, we will also use the Russian vaccine. And this is a consciousness that we need the effort of everybody. And we will not continue to make a differentiation, this is a Russian and this is a Chinese, and I don't trust them. We will not do this. It is a learning process. But I think we understand very well that we have to keep together the whole world.
So I don't know, do we have some questions in the audience or not? Not for the moment, not for the chat? No, okay, so I continue. Okay, to talk about this strange period, I'm thinking about the Donna Haraway's essay, Stay with the Trouble. I think it's in one of the video of Festival 404 in the campus number 1 by Citron Lunardi. Yeah, and I think it's this idea of stay with the trouble is quite interesting because it's very topical now. It's the right moment to talk about how to stay with the trouble. What do you think about this expression?
I remember the artwork. Not exactly what they say about Donna Haraway right now, but I remember that they were dealing with the limits, how to recognize the limits between natural and artificial. That was their artwork about. And as I said at the beginning, nowadays it's almost impossible to recognize the limits between natural and artificial, because we are turning into artificial people, and I don't mean about our organism, our ADN, but I mean about when our brain, what we think, our minds. So since our minds are being colonized, and it's about perception, of course, sooner or later, this will be translated into biological specs, I suppose. I remember that word was very nice. From Italy.
Okay, perhaps Scott, how do you live with the trouble in Hong Kong, and what is the place of the artist in this period in Asia?
Hi, that's a loaded question. I would say the place of an artist, of course, we are now recently under something called the National Security Law, and the government is sort of rounding up people who would be inciting against the government as they sort of change the political system of Hong Kong. So Hong Kong is in a very dramatic transition right now, but you were talking about the politicization of the vaccines, and of course here we can only get the China ones. The Western ones are slowly trickling in, but we started with CoronaVac and Sinovac, which were both from China. what Gina said at the very end there about bio, I think that bioart and biotechnology is going to be the next wave. And I think genetic engineering is something that China has already been doing for a decade plus, because they're one of the few developed countries in the world that allows it. So there's already hacker labs in Shenzhen, which are basically students who are playing around with CRISPR to modify genetic material. So that will either lead us to the end of civilization or completely redefinitions of what our bodies are. And it's very easy to sort of religiousise that, like how dare you modify the human body, but there are a lot of scientists that believe that we should be doing it. Otherwise, artificial intelligence will pass us. And if we do hope to do space travel, our current bodies could never survive it, but a genetically engineered one could. So it's I agree with what Gina was saying, that I think it's heading towards us losing our sort of physical temporality and becoming something built as opposed to something sort of accidental between our mother and father. I see that coming very quickly in this part of the world. That's probably pretty scary.
Okay, Regina, you want to add something about this?
I did not understand really everything very well, but as he is in Hong Kong and you are from a completely different point of view to our world. Now we are here in the old Europe and we think that we are in the center, but while especially research or immunology, because I was in contact with those people, the center of research is there in the Far East, China, Australia, Korea, Japan. No? So I guess this reminded me now what Scott is talking about.
Okay, thank you. I think that time is over. I'd like to end with Gina and the manifesto, because Mediademic is also a manifesto. And you wrote, "When they sleep, our world has nightmares." But who is they? The artists?
No. I always refer to them today as those who control this world, not to those like the artists who are trying to rebuild or no. They is always the main hard structure who sometimes appears in front of us with as an spectacle, as entertainment, but as technology. As new media, as something new, but it's not new at all. It is the oldest structures that are reinventing themselves to trying to conquer our surprise, our love. As Neil Postman said, then from the new media ecology, we fell in love with the gadgets, we fell in love with technology. And all that love is the love that we don't feel for each other, right? I think that is a good way to end my part.
Okay, thank you, Gina.
Thank you.
Okay, so Regina and Scott, you agree? You are awake in consciousness. You're right with that? Okay,
Yes.
so thank you. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so thank you for you three guests. Thank you, and bye to Hong Kong and Argentina, Rosario. Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks to you.
That's the end of the focus number 3.